Hello, and welcome to the next episode of DDR, a podcast all about your favorite Drow, Drizzt Do'Urden. My name is Justin, and in this episode, we will be diving deep into Chapter 16 of Homeland, titled Sacrilege, discussing all of our favorite plot points, characters, and more.
For our listeners that are listening on the radio, you don't get to see me do all these cool hand gestures that I'm doing while we do the break-in, because I'm trying to get the intro a little bit different.
I thought that was just for me, Jeffrey.
No, well, I mean, it was up until we started doing the YouTube channel, but now people get to come and watch, right? My name is Jeffrey. Of course, we're such big fans of D&D that we actually got together with our actual D&D group and went and saw the movie Dungeons and Dragons together. Now, I'm not about to say that this makes us some kinds of experts. Yeah, in real life, not virtually. It's like I'm not trying to say this makes us any kind of expert at all, but did any of you guys get together with your groups and go see the movie? Maybe you did. If you haven't made it there yet, I know adventuring can be hard. We get it. No spoilers here. We're not going to do that for you. But what we're going to try to do is add a little bit of enjoyment by looking at parts of this chapter and seeing how it relates to the tabletop game of 5e.
I have a question for you guys. Are you guys reading along with us? We really aren't going that fast. It's only one chapter a week. It's really not that much. In fact, it's perhaps it's too slow, but don't worry. We do have plans to pick up the pace for season 2. So we will keep you posted as we get closer. Also, we love hearing from everyone that is reading along with us. If that's you, you're awesome. Thank you. If you haven't reached out to us yet, what are you waiting for? Send us an email at drizztdoneright@gmail.com.
Or, better yet, there's this small link in our episode description that offers you the ability to go beyond the page. Have you read through the books a few times and thought that maybe you'd really like to find some like-minded people that you want to be a part of a group with? Maybe you long for a place where people would get together and discuss your favorite Drow. Maybe the parts of the books that you fell in love with. Well, do we have a surprise for you? If you look real hard at that episode description, you're going to find the invitation to the Discord link, Drizzt Done Right. When you enter, you'll find our Dim Light Squad. Maybe you'll even meet our House Nobles. We have a link for spoilers in there. There's one for people who've gone far past the first book, and want to discuss some of the things that they've read and where it's going to lead to, some of their conjecture. Mm-hmm. We've got the podcast links, the video links, a general discussion board, and a newly added creature feature board.
Love it.
We keep a menagerie of beasties that we come across inside of the book. It's just up and running. Got out of construction phase, so give us a few moments, but it'll get a little bit bigger as we go. We've got so many people in there already, but we got room for more, so come on in, interact with us, and we might even make your comments part of the show. Maybe you go into our fan art show and tell link, and you can see the giant gem that Valeria found, big enough to make Regis jealous. If you're courageous enough to brave the Underdark, we'll see you there.
All right. Well, here we are, episode 16, Jeffrey. Over halfway through.
Wow.
Whew.
Does that mean our podcast show has legally become old enough to drive? Like, if you think about one chapter per year, it's aged and progressed to the point where it's a full-grown adult. People are pressing play from over 17 different countries. Right? Like we said last time, Canada's our second leading country right now. They went right past Japan. So we got a little competition for where the international market's going to go. Who'd have ever thought that?
There's a language barrier there, right? I mean, a lot more people in Canada, I would think, speak English than in Japan. Maybe not entirely, but maybe that's not true. But I would imagine. So yeah. Anyway,
it
Jeffrey,
is neat that it just at least it makes you think, right? I mean, I've never sat back to think, why do people in Canada listen to me more than people in Japan? Or why do people in Sweden not listen to us as much as people in the UK? That had never occurred to me until we pressed play and started doing this the podcast together. And it's been crazy.
Maybe they just think our voices sound really funny, and maybe they don't understand what we're talking about, but it's like, listen to these guys. Listen to the noises they're making.
I do make fun noises. I try to say it in a sultry voice for people at home. It's I listened to Rammstein. I went to see them at concert, and I didn't understand 90% of what they were saying, but the show was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard that.
Oh, they used like fireworks and pyro to such a degree that it just like leaves clouds of smoke trailing the stadium. It was crazy. Right. So I'm in Philadelphia. It was great.
Awesome. So, no spoilers.
Nope.
But Jeffrey, I just have to say that Sunday last week was probably one of the coolest things that we have ever done.
I liked it.
And that is definitely my dim light of this week.
That's your IRL dim light?
That is my IRL dim light. For those of you that don't know, Jeffrey and I and the rest of my D&D group that, like Jeffrey just said, we play online. We have never all been together in real life before. Ever. Not all together.
No, I didn't even think about that.
You've met Ryan before a number of times. You've played in person with Ryan before, but Mandy never played in person with any of us.
Nope, she joined the second group that we put together.
Yeah,
right?
and so we have not all been in the same place all at the same time, and for that to be for the first place for us to all meet and get together, for that to be at the D&D movie, that was so special.
Oh, it was great too because I broke the news to Bob, my other co-host from the Robert and Robin's radio podcast. When he asked me what we went to see, he goes, "Where'd you go?" And I was like, "Well, we went to up to the town. We went to see it." He goes, "You went all the way up here and didn't tell me you were going to see the movie? I would have loved to go with you." And I was like, oh, buddy, I didn't think, see, when I pictured where we were going, I figured it was more towards like this end of the state. And Bobby goes, "That is like 15 minutes from me." I was like,
"Oh, man."
Buddy, my heart breaks. I never even thought about it. I'm so sorry.
Oh, man.
So it's like we had a multi-state event happen because Mandy drove from several states away.
All the way from Georgia.
Yep. I drove from Maryland. We all met up in like middle of PA-ish almost.
Yep. And the rest of us are in PA, but yeah, we found a central point and made it work, and wow.
Yeah, we got to see the movie and have a fun time together, and especially having like started the show together, and then taking that next step of having the D&D group. We're diving into D&D. We're looking at it a little deeper for the show, and then boom, the movie's coming out. We all get to see it together. Like that, it was really cool.
So magical. It was so magical.
Like at one point, Mandy leaned over and told me about the creatures that were in the show, the movie we were watching. And I didn't even know what they were, but they were, it's a little Easter egg. I won't get into it, won't name them.
Yeah.
But it's a little Easter egg. These little creatures were going at each other. And she was, "Oh, look, those are the, et cetera, et cetera."
Yeah.
I was like, huh. So I went back. I read some more intro pieces into the movie. Some of the stuff that they left Easter eggs for throughout the fandom, I guess is the best way to put it. So that I could, make sure that some of the things I thought were right, and then some of the things I didn't even notice. It was really cool.
Right. Yeah. No. Loved it. Loved all those little Easter eggs and the creatures and the referring to the towns and everything.
Yep.
It was so cool. So if you haven't actually gone to see the movie yet, definitely give it a shot. It's worth watching. So
I agree. And that would take up the dim light of my week as well as we catch up on the small talk part. I mean, it was a big thing. Me and Elizabeth went out to see Screen 6, so we did go see another movie.
Oh, okay.
But that's been about it. I like to hit the cinema. It's always got a nostalgic piece to me. It makes me think about being a kid, and just something about the big screen that adds a little bit of magic and mystique to it.
Totally. Yeah. Yep. So next on my list is gotta go see that Super Mario movie. Gotta take my son to go see it. I've heard
it does look good.
I've heard good things. I've heard some not so good things, but I'm like, my son won't know the difference.
No, because for him it is the Mario movie. There's nothing else. There's no precedent. There's nothing.
Right.
I remember seeing the Mario Brothers movie growing up as a kid, and I wanted it to be so great. And it's like I love Bob Hoskins. He did Who Framed Roger Rabbit. John Leguizamo's pretty funny, and then I didn't understand anything they did in that movie.
Nope.
I have since looked back on it with much fondness and love, and it has got a lot of great moments. It's just it's not what I thought I was going to get from Super Mario movie. I can pretty much put $1 on the fact that this movie is going to give you everything you want from a Mario standpoint, as it actually has Mario, Bowser, recognizable characters. Just
it
it's
at
cartoonish.
Least looks like them. It at least looks like them because my son watched the trailer a number of times, and he recognizes that Mario is just like he doesn't sound like Mario, Dad. Like, what's wrong with his voice?
Oh,
Like,
well,
well,
Hollywood has a different different bent on it, buddy.
Yep. So he'll be fine though. He'll love it.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Why don't we go ahead and get this show on the road here, Jeffrey?
Absolutely.
Let's get everyone started off here with the Drizzt.
All right. The Drizzt is the part of this show where we take a look at the chapter and give you the Drizzt of it. It's all about the wordplay. Well, here we are. Last day of Drizzt's time at the academy. Last chapter, he was doing 6 months at Sorcerer. In this chapter, we find him having finished up his time at Arachnilith. It's kind of like, Drizzt the college years, I guess.
Yeah.
The rhetoric that started with Master Hatchinet had only continued in endless eulogies to Lolth. Drizzt saw her followers as little better than slaves. The school was devoid of love. He saw her devotion to her as saw their devotion to her as selfish, only chasing higher titles in her servitude for the power that they held, the rewards that she could bestow upon her followers. It had nothing to do with how they cared for the deity, any kind of love like that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a bleak picture he paints of their religious system, I guess, a religious hierarchy.
Yeah.
He eyes down, mouth shut. He made his way through those 6 months, and now he stood ready for the graduation ceremony, which Vierna promised would help him to understand the true glory of Lolth.
Oh,
right.
I forgot about that promise.
It sounds ominous because every time so far that somebody had been like, "Look, Drizzt, this is gonna make you understand why Drow are Drow. Hey, this is gonna show you the magic of Menzo Barons." And it's been brutal, vicious, and it's just not gone the way that anyone thought it would. Because Drizzt is not your regular Drow.
Yeah, and that it's not getting better.
No. Drizzt felt his fear spiral out of control. Was he afraid that she was right? That this event would finally unlock the Drow in him that they all sought? The Drow that he despised? He walked into this giant room, he walked into this room with a giant brazier, resembling a spider. That's such a cool image to me, that you walk in and see this gigantic flame pit, metalwork structure in the shape of a spider with this huge fire coming through. The matron mistress was there. She has a bunch of high priestesses with her. His classmates filled the room. And then in comes this young cleric. She drops her robes, gets naked, stands right before the flames. And Drizzt is kind of out of his element a little bit here. He feels his pulse racing. Mm-hmm. He's not sure if it's from the danger. Maybe it's from the lady standing in front of the fire. A thick red smoke filled the room. Kind of makes Drizzt feel a little bit dizzy. The smoke fills the room and he heard the chant, or the word Glabrazu. It's a summons. His senses are a bit fuzzy. The young cleric calls out, Glabrazu. The high priestess gave her, inspiration, like we mentioned before. The whip cracks.
Right.
Encouraging her to continue calling out. Glabrazu. The flames grew and in walked a giant denizen of the lower plains, seemingly even taller than its 9 feet. The Glabrazu displayed giant pincered claws for hands and a second set of smaller arms protruding out of its chest. Kind of like I'm doing the T-Rex arms for the video, but like when you see the picture, we have it in the creature feature inside the Discord link. It is a monstrosity, and it is, to see it walking through those flames would have had to just been a moment, I guess, to say the least. Like that's something's going to make a lot of people just lose their mind and run.
You would think, yeah.
Drizzt automatically wanted to attack it, save the damsel and the day. But he was the only one who seemed to sense danger. When he looked around, everyone seemed deeply engaged and excited. And as the scene unfolded before him, he felt a hand on his leg. He looked around, and he felt like he was losing control. He didn't like the hand. He didn't like the scene, nothing unfolding before him. He panicked, and he dashes out of the room on these wobbly legs. Outside, he's, back up against the wall, chest heaving, trying to catch his breath. He was startled as Vierna sneaks up on him, her robe casually left open at the front. She urges him to come back into the room before his absence is noticed, but Drizzt just couldn't comply. He didn't have feelings towards that woman. He didn't understand why there was a giant orgy going on inside the room and was more than maybe a bit overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not so far going as you would think your regular graduation ceremony would go. There's no roll
Right.
call. There's no diplomas being handed out.
Who's the keynote speaker here?
I think the valedictorian just dropped her robes and started calling out a Glaberzoo. Then comes
The
this giant
Glaberzoo is
demon.
the keynote speaker.
Right? I think so. Definitely the guest of honor. So Vierna explains that Zacnafane mated with Matron Malice more out of duty than out of love. She had to reach out and physically try to coax him back into the room. He gives him a little slap, but he resists even harder, lashing out verbally at her, cursing the Spider Queen, accusing her of stealing any value that makes Drow different than the stone they walk on. Thought that was a very great line.
Yeah.
Vierna extolled the power gained and returned, but Drizzt condemned the unholy union, disgusted at what she had given of herself to become a high priestess. Vierna lashes out physically again at his insolence. She demanded that he comes with her to a place that she wants to show him. And like Drizzt is kind of a little cowed at this point. He's not bent, he's not broken, but having been punched a few times, he really respects still that Vierna is a high priestess. She still is a ruling female in the class caste system. So Drizzt follows along. They end up going to the entrance of Tir Bresh, and Drizzt tells her, "Look, I can't pass." He hasn't yet graduated, but Vierna assures him it's a mere formality. He'd be able to pass. She was actually, being a high priestess, would have the ability to graduate Drizzt right on the spot if she wanted to.
Right.
But essentially, everything's pretty much over anyway. He's a graduate. We can go. So he ends up just following along because, again, doesn't want to anger her again. She was his family. Jeepers, give me a second. I have to take a drink.
No, you're good. So they went to the entrance of Tir Bresh. Tir Bresh is where he was studying the last 6 months, right?
Tir Bresh, I believe, is the compound of all three together. When you look at
what am I
the
saying?
entire
What's the spider queen
Arachnolith.
religion school? Arachnolith. That's what I was thinking. So
Yep.
the entrance of Tir Bresh. So he's like leaving the compound. Is that the idea?
I get the feeling that essentially what they're doing is they're leaving where he's allowed to go on the compound.
Okay. All right. So
Where
they're
he's
going
entering, like you can imagine that when he's going through his training, he's restricted in travel to certain parts, and where they're about to go, he would need full access. And she is just
Right.
like, nope, we're chugging along.
Yep. She's like, you have permission. I have the authority to grant the permission. So here we go.
And then naively, Drizzt thought that maybe they were headed home, and he's currently told otherwise. They come upon 3 tunnels guarded by large scorpion statues. And I couldn't find any significance about it, while I was putting this down, but it's just kind of weird to me that these scorpion statues are guarding these 3 tunnels. Vierna looks at them for a little bit and then chooses the smallest tunnel. They end up going into what seems like a maze as minutes become hours, but Vierna seems locked into this course that she seems to know really, really well. They end up coming upon this chasm, and Vierna taps Drizzt on the forehead. She tells him that she's cast a spell of masking, that they don't have anything to worry about. He's still kind of confused at this point because they just showed up. He doesn't know what's happening. She didn't bother to clue him in.
Yeah,
They levitate off the ledge down onto the floor of the chasm.
I missed the tap. I was wondering about that. I was like, when did she cast that? I didn't even catch it.
It's a moment because she didn't do it silently. I didn't write down the words that she used for the cast, but yeah, he can feel the effects of the spell as she taps him on the forehead.
Oh, I missed that. Darn it.
So they levitate off this ledge, and as they're going down to the floor, Drizzt can feel this brooding wickedness that seems to hang in the air, almost as tangible as a mist. I thought that was a beautiful description. I wanted to include that.
Right.
When Drizzt saw the being before them, he was confused. It looked like a drow elf, but only from the waist up. It had 8 arachnid legs as its lower body and a large, bloated abdomen spider body for the lower half. It's kind of like a centaur, but instead of person and horse, it's drow and spider.
It's terrifying.
Vierna explained that this is a drider. So just putting it back together real quick, drow and spider is a drider. I liked it.
Perfect, yeah.
I didn't think about it at first, but yep, it definitely is. I can't remember the English grammar word for that. Not a palindrome, but yeah, it's that. It's a combination of the 2 words. Then Drizzt watches. Vierna explains that this is a drider. This is what becomes of those who anger the Spider Queen. Lolth is not a merciful deity. Drizzt watches this drider. He's completely focused and enraptured by what stands before him. He'd never seen these things before, never really heard of them. And then suddenly Vierna just disappears into the stone behind him. He spins around, but not quick enough to stop her, not quick enough to catch her, and she just leaves him by himself, no longer with the protection of the masking spell that he just had on. And in his anger, he doesn't notice the Drider's still behind him and feels the bite of the arrow into his leg. So he spins around and he goes to engage it, but he can feel the leg becoming numb and just becoming useless. And he realizes there's poison on the arrow that's bit into his flesh. So he manages to get his knife up in time, his sword up in time, and deflect the second arrow that's incoming. Bends down on one knee, breaks the arrow, continues forth, encounters a second Drider who comes in from a different angle, wielding an axe that he manages to just avoid because he's got such great dexterity. Ends up being able to impale the Drider from underneath and just spills the guts out in this wonderfully
gruesome,
viscerous description.
Sam versus Shelob style.
Oh, just in my head, I figured it was almost like Luke in the Tauntaun, where he just guts it and he's almost inside the spider. And as he manages to just defend off that spider, he's trying to continue to fight for his survival. He feels himself start to lose consciousness. His eyes become heavy, and he's just falling away.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Until suddenly he's slammed into a wall. Confused, Drizzt wonders what's going on. Until he suddenly sees, of all people, Matron Malice standing before him. His eyes are blurry, his vision's not right, and he says, Malice? Mother?
He must be seeing things.
Being the fantastic mom of the year that Matron Malice is, she punches him angrily and screams at him, reminding him that he will use her proper title, Matron Malice, and he will remember his place. She warns him that he'll either learn his place or she will bring him back here, not to die, but to become a Drider himself.
Oh, that is terrifying.
I mean, he is literally just faced death, slipping away, knowing that this might be the end, and then boom, you're saved. Except, are you really saved? Because they pulled you out to tell you that we're not going to let you die that easy. No. We've got plans for you. Like, oh.
Right. Crazy. No, I always loved that scene going through this book. This is my 4th or 5th time going through the book, and that Drider scene, oh man, those things are so creepy.
Yeah, I mean, they have a real ick factor.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead, before I talk too much, let's go ahead and jump into our favorite parts in the dim light reel. The dim light reel is where we cast darkness on our favorite parts of the chapter and dim light all of our favorite characters, events, descriptions, and more. This week, my favorite part, though there were many, my favorite part came out on top, has to be Drizzt finally denouncing Lolth publicly. Like, for much of the book, as readers, we knew that Drizzt gears were turning. We knew that he wasn't on board with this chaotic evil deity, like, the whole time. Now, he finally expressed how he truly feels about Lolth to his sister, and boy, I'm so proud of that Drow.
They grow up so fast.
Drizzt left that room where he was being seduced in a panic. After he got out, he stood there anxious, realizing that he just did something very bad and just like, what are the repercussions going to be here?
Yeah, I think it's interesting there, too, because when you think about it, right, when they describe the hand on his thigh, it's really to draw attention to the moment in the middle of this whole ceremony that there's about to be a whole lot of mating going on.
Right.
And it's, they use the smoke and it sets the setting. And, like, when Drizzt runs out, well, he has just not listened to a higher female inside. Yeah. And he knows that he spent his whole life being told that's bad. But before he even knew it, boom, outside, like, wait, oh no, what's gonna happen now?
Crap.
Like, I'm caught, right? I'm caught.
Yeah. And so what I thought was interesting was Vierna saw this. She saw the whole thing.
Right.
So, and she comes out and she's in robes that are basically like falling off, right? Like they're open in the front.
They are
also in there.
diaphanous robes. I always love that word, diaphanous. They're kind of like see-through, so they don't hide anything.
Right.
The robes are just, they're just there.
Right. So she was also in there, I guess, as a high priestess.
Yes.
But she decided to also leave the ceremony when she saw Drizzt leaving. I guess the whole thing of dishonor on our house.
Yeah, I feel like, though, that the high priestesses really have the run of the roost there. Like, nobody's questioning what they're doing. I mean, she might just be
that's true.
running out to grab him, drag him back. Maybe she's mating with him in the hall. I don't really know if Drow will mate inside their family like that, but I mean, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't think anybody's really going to question that. Also, they're probably right now so enraptured with each other and everything that's going on that, they might not even pay attention at all.
No one even noticed, yeah.
No, like in a G-rated nature, they're all busy eating popcorn, and the crunching from the kernels are so loud that, I mean, people probably didn't hear Vierna leave or anything.
So, yeah, Vierna steps up to him and is basically like, "Aw, you would rather have some privacy. That's so cute." And Drizzt is just like, "No, you're all crazy." Like,
yep.
To which Vierna commands Drizzt, like, "You will go back in there. Like, there's still time."
You thought I was asking?
Like, just get your butt back in there. And Drizzt comes back with the best comeback. Like, "Go kiss a spider." I'm like, oh, crap.
That's where it's like grade school kids, everybody goes, ooh. Yeah. Like, about to go down now.
Yeah, so he comes back with, "Go kiss a spider, damn your spider queen." I'm just like, whoa!
Oh, yeah.
So that was my dim light. Just that moment, I'm just like, oh, like, I'm so proud of this Drow. Because, I mean, he finally voiced his opinion here. Yep. He does go on to challenge Vierna's devotion to Lolth, saying that, like you said, and I loved it too, just Lolth steals everything from you that makes you worth more than the stone we walk on. Love that. He goes on to say that it's an evil union, the union between Lolth and the Drow. And he goes on to also say that the cost of following Lolth is just too much. And so, yeah, here we have a Drow, Drizzt, being 20 plus years. I've kind of lost track of how exactly old he is. He's been almost constantly taking in information. Well, it's less him taking in information and more them forcing the information into him. And so he's spent most of his life just kind of like taking it in, processing it, trying to figure out what this world is. And he came to his own conclusion, and it is, and he starts backing his opinion based off of these things that he's perceived. And as a dad, as I used to be a teacher, I just absolutely love seeing that. I love seeing people forming their own opinions based off of the things that they have perceived, the events that they have lived. So yeah, it definitely takes me back to my teaching days, back when kids would voice an opinion in class. Whether I would agree with their opinion or not, I would instinctively challenge it.
Oh, yeah.
I love doing that. Just to like, do you really think that way?
Being forced to define and defend your opinion is a great thought experiment, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. It really, I think, helps you as an individual.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, like, as a teacher, that's something that I wanted to, help my students with. And more so than ever, I mean, it turns out that when you ask a high schooler why they think a certain way, they can't always tell you why they think a certain way, which just basically is telling you that they're just parroting their parents. And I hate that, but whatever. I guess you got to do that for a little bit, right? Until you figure
Shout out
things
to our
out,
younger
but-
demographic. If you want to yell at Justin, you send that email to drizztdoneright@gmail.com.
And I will challenge you on all of your views.
He will make you defend them.
So, Drizzt was never one to parrot anything that Drow culture has taught him, which is an admirable trait. But he accomplished this by basically just staying quiet. Which,
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was also, I mean, he had one of the greatest trainers in that regard. I mean, you look at the philosophy, it comes from Zach
Right.
but a lot of that was also very couched. Like, look, don't
Yep.
lash out, keep it inside. And this is that moment where, like, the kind of like it's like watching a flower bloom, like you say. It's just it's beautiful.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, he spent most of his life just being quiet, but he's not quiet anymore. And so, yeah, just absolutely loved that. I mean, honestly, like once all this happened, once that damn your Spider Queen came out, I was just like, oh crap, go pack your bags, boy. You're out of here. Like, he's got to get out of here. Like, he's going to be running out of Menzo Berenzon with the Academy patrols on his heels. Like, he's making his way for the surface. Like, that's the end. He's done. Like, he's done in Menzo Berenzon.
Yeah, and I mean, as we find out, like at the end of the chapter, you were really close as to him. He almost wasn't able to run anywhere.
Right. I mean, I know that there's 35 plus books, so I knew he wasn't going to die, but but I figured he's got to be done in this city. So, now that by the end of the chapter, you see Matron Malice knocks him out, and basically he's right before she says, you do this again and you're going to become a Drider. Like, oh, I'm really interested to see Matron Malice's response to this whole thing.
Oh, you know that
after the dust
there's
settles.
a storm of brewing, I guess is the best way to put it, right?
Yeah, so
that's actually what ended up for me making my dim light squad or making my dim light reel for this one is Matron Malice saves the day. So I found the appearance of Matron Malice in this chapter to actually be really interesting. So I couldn't resist taking a better look at it and casting it as my dim light reel. We've seen Drizzt grow for 16 chapters now, and his relationship with the head of his own family has been precarious at best.
Yeah.
So it's all the more shocking that she's the one who shows up to save him from what is definitely the most danger he's ever been in up until this point. That Vierna thought that she was being merciful in leaving him to his death because surely he would only go on to continue to fail and anger the Spider Queen, right? Worse, he would probably just bring a whole lot of dishonor to House Do'Urden at the same time.
Which would make the house fall out of favor of Lolth, and then who knows what's going to happen.
Well, judging by the few chapters we read where we saw Drow Justice, we got a pretty good idea of what she thinks is going to happen.
Right.
So she moves actually to see him punished, almost to preempt the anger of Lolth. But instead of tormenting him, she's going to allow him to die. And this is the first time that Drizzt has ever seen Driders. He trusts his sister, at least as much as he can trust anyone that's not named Zach Nefane or Gwenevere. And now he's been betrayed. The Drider catches him off guard, and the bite of the arrow carries a poison into his system. We'll get into it in a bit of a dungeon delve, but Driders attack with poison. Interestingly, I find there's no real panic to Drizzt, even here. He feels his leg go useless, and he does his best to fend off the second arrow. He snaps off the previous arrow, and then he tries to escape, only to run into another Drow. He manages to murder that another Drider. He manages to murder that Drider, which I feel like is an amazing feat. Like, doing it while infected with poison makes it an even more amazing feat. Like, at this point, there's just platitudes on platitudes on platitudes. And he fights until the end. Just keeps going on with every ounce of energy that he has, with no fear of death, only to be saved by his sister. Vierna slams him into the wall and says out loud, "He lives. We must get him back quickly and tend to his wounds."
Was that Vierna or was that Malice?
Because then he sees another figure in front of him before hearing Vierna apologize, clearly not to him, but saying she thought it was the best way. And then he hears this unemotional reply: "We cannot afford to lose him." He fought through the blur in his eyes, trying to focus. He whispers out, almost in confusion, "Malice? Mother?" Malice latches out and punches him, enraged. "Matron Malice," she growls, face to face with Drizzt. "Do not ever forget that." and Drizzt could feel the coldness coming from her, rivaling that of the poison. The relief he felt at seeing her fled quicker than it appeared. She reiterated the command he'd been hearing his whole life. You must learn your place, with a roar.
Ooh.
This moment is something that I think will forever define the relationship between Matron Malice and Drizzt. I don't say mother and son because I don't really think she looks at him with any type of fondness at all. At least not that we've seen up until this point in the book for sure.
Mm-hmm.
She simply sees him as another member of House Do'Urden, another tool to be used in advancing her ambition. Yep. This moment should serve to remove any question that Drizzt has of whether or not his mother actually cares for or about him. She leans in close and says, hear my words. Vierna brought you to this place to have you killed. She showed you a mercy. Then she actually looks at Vierna with disappointment. Of all the emotions to have in this moment, she's disappointed. Not with Vierna's decision, but with the execution of it. So Matron Malice turns to Drizzt and says, I understand the will of the Spider Queen better than she. If you ever speak ill of Lolth, our goddess, again, I will take you back to this place myself, but not to kill you. That would be too easy. Then she grabs him and forces him to look at the freshly dispatched remains of the Drider next to him before assuring him, you will come back here to become a Drider. Wow. I mean, talk about a lack of maternal instinct. Death would be too easy, too simple. She would rather disfigure him into this gross monstrosity that lay before him, a punishment that would seem to be the most severe form of punishment we've seen yet. And she would do this if he were to simply speak ill of Lolth again. She literally saved his life only to let him know the reason he draws a breath is because she allows it, and if he continues to persist, she will make him see death as a preferable outcome. I don't think he's gonna get her a Mother's Day gift anytime soon.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, wow. It's brutal. And that's brutal even for a race of people that are brutal. I mean,
right.
We know that the Drow are considered to be these vicious, just calculating, murderous individuals, and she just tops it. Like, she's the cherry on top of the entire vicious Drow sundae.
Yeah. And I mean, for chapters upon chapters upon chapters, my dim lights have been just how brutal the culture is, and how, like, every chapter I'm more surprised at how brutal they are.
Yeah.
And it just does not cease.
No, and it's like every time you're like, I get it, the Drow are bad. It's like, wow, really?
Like, that's worse. Like
how? How do you even, oh.
So, yeah, I mean, not that I want that to happen to Drizzt, but I would love to see how a Drow becomes a Drider.
Well,
that would be...
luckily for you, we transition out of the dim light into the dungeon delve, and we may find out just a little bit more about that process.
All right, let's go ahead, strap on those headlamps, and delve right into the dungeon. The Dungeon Delve is the part of the show where we link this chapter with our favorite tabletop RPG. So, my dim light this week has to be that spell that Vierna cast. That spell that I so obviously did not see her cast.
Well, it's a good thing that you're taking a bigger look at it.
Now, see, I figured she just kind of like quietly did it, and then we didn't. But yeah, this spell of masking. I wanted to talk about this spell that Vierna claimed to cast on her and Drizzt. Again, I didn't notice it actually happened. I thought that she just like said that it happened, and like maybe she.
Oh, you thought she was like, no, we're good, as if she didn't really do anything, like wave my hand. And
and that's the other half of it. I was just like, or maybe she didn't like. Like, did she actually cast something? Because when she left, there were the Driders, there was Drizzt, and they saw him, they started fighting. And so since I missed that little bit, I just thought like, maybe she didn't cast anything. But then I was like, well, let's take a look at this as if she did actually cast something. So, the idea of casting a spell that makes it impossible for creatures to see you sounds cool, so I wanted to look into that. I went through the player's handbook. I found a number of spells that, when cast, could result in similar effects, but I couldn't find a spell that resembled what Vierna cast perfectly.
Okay.
You might be able to use Dominate Monster in a similar way, where you basically charm the monster into doing your bidding, such as not attacking or attacking on command. Maybe that's what Vierna actually did.
She was actually baiting him in there, making the Dryers see him.
Maybe she just claimed that they could not see them. Major Image is another spell that could possibly have a similar effect, where you could create a 20-foot image and place it on the Drider in such a way that Vierna and Drizzt could effectively hide behind it.
What about invisibility?
Well, and that's the next one.
Oh, well, allow me to jump in on your part. I'm sorry. Cut you off.
No, it's fine. No. So that was the other part. Like, greater invisibility allows you to cast invisibility on multiple people. I forget exactly how many. But she could have cast it on the two of them. And that seems like the most plausible spell that she was using. The only thing that seemed wrong about it is the fact that Drizzt was obviously able to see himself as well as Vierna, so they were not actually invisible, right?
Oh, okay.
So I don't think it was exactly greater invisibility, but maybe something that was more selective. And so what I did is I Googled D&D spells selective invisibility, and it took me right to a D&D wiki homebrew page. And it sounded very similar to what Vierna had cast, with the exception that Drizzt would also have to cast it, because when you cast selective invisibility, it's like the target cannot see the caster. So Drizzt would have also had to cast it. So anyway, it wasn't the perfect fit, so I went the next step and I homebrewed it even a little bit further.
Excellent.
And I made a spell block, and I fully plan on posting that on Discord. Jeffrey, maybe this is the first time I'm telling you about it. Maybe we can actually make a page. I know we have a stat blocks page that's locked from everyone where we were just kind of throwing stuff. Mm-hmm. There's not that much on there, actually. I was thinking maybe we would make that live, and because I want to share this stat block with people that of this spell that I made.
Yeah, I mean, we can do it as a like a homebrew setup, or we can do it as just stat block setup, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, maybe we want to come up with some clever spell channel name. I don't know. Excellent. We'll figure it out.
And
get it
when
out
we
there
do,
somehow.
you people in the future listening to this now will be able to find it where?
On our Discord. The link is in the description.
Excellent.
So yeah, I made this spell block. I'll share it on Discord. You guys take a look at it. Let me know if you want to if you would suggest any changes, if you would make any changes. So this spell, like I said, I highly adapted it from that homebrew spell, Selective Invisibility.
Okay.
I named it Vierna's Mask or something like that. Vierna's Masking, or I forget. Give it a better name. So this spell is listed as a 3rd level enchantment with a casting time of 1 action and a range of 60 feet. The spell requires a verbal and somatic components and concentration for up to 10 minutes. I was trying to think of some material components that could be required, but the creative juices just were not flowing at the time, and I couldn't think of anything clever. I don't know, something that makes you invisible. Or something that is like light related.
Or you could do something
Mirror,
different to
shard of
have
a
like,
mirror.
it requires eyelashes. Because it's sight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like either the caster would have to sacrifice their own eyelashes, which after a few uses, it would be very, you only have so many you could do before they grew back. Or maybe, you know what I mean, like the eyelashes of the individual you were making invisible.
Ooh, yeah. Or eyelashes of some like rare creature just for
Yeah.
making it difficult to cast it or something like that. Yeah, those are good ideas. Again, if you guys have any ideas, let us hear them. So I made this spell so that you can target up to 3 creatures. They attempt a wisdom or intelligence saving throw, their choice. And on a failed save, you alter the target's minds to erase your own image from their minds. I just think that's so cool. I just think it's so they just plain cannot see you. The targets just cannot see you for the entire duration, which is only 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's
not that they just can't see you. It's that their mind is not able to process the image of you that they see. Like, it's just all gone.
Yeah. Now I think that fits the book pretty well of what Vierna was saying to have casted, right? But then this homebrewed version went on to add at higher levels, there's other things. This is outside the scope of the book. We really didn't see this in the book, but I thought it was too cool to take out, so I left it in there. But so there is an option to cast the spell at higher levels. It's a 3rd level spell, but if you cast it at 7th level, so much higher, then you're able to mask 2 more senses from the targets.
Okay.
So now it's not that they can't see you, but now they also can't hear you. And hey, if they're wolves or something, they also cannot smell you.
Which, if you think about it, we kind of did see, though, because the Drider was alerted that something was there, but they couldn't see Drizzt or Vierna.
Yeah.
So it was on the lookout because they're, great hunters. So they knew something was disturbing the area. They just couldn't place it.
Right. So we knew that those senses were still there. So anyway, I left an option that at higher levels, you can block out 2 more senses, or at level 7, you can block out 2 more senses. Or at level 9, which is the highest spell level, you can mask all traces of existence from, like, the targets will not be able to sense any trace of the caster. So basically, you'll be able to walk through mud without leaving tracks. Wow. You'll be able to physically touch them without them feeling you. Like, it seems like it might be a little overpowered.
But you're also talking level 9. And, I mean, how many of those spell slots do you get? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, usages.
It's like 1.
Right.
At level 20, I think it's 1.
You're a master rogue at that point, so you could probably pull off the greatest diamond heist ever, but, like, you're not able to go from battle to battle to battle. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like we mentioned before on how you expend spell slots. Sometimes you want that really high level for the miraculous pull-off. Sometimes you don't.
So, might be a little overpowered. Jump on the Discord, take a look at it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you would change about it. And yeah, that's my dungeon delve for this week. Jeffrey, tell us about those Driders.
Okay, I shall. So again, mention it again, the fun and interesting addition to the Discord that we made, and then Justin tagging on another one, we've added that creature feature link. So what I wanted to do was take a little bit of a deeper look at the Drider. We met 2 creatures, so when you go in there, you'll see a little bit more about the Glaber Zoo, which is a awesome creature. But he was mentioned a little bit more in the chapter. So I wanted to look at the Drider, which, again, find it inside the creature feature, but we're going to dive into it here. What is a Drider? It's a really good question. Simple answer is that it's half a drow, half a spider. The lower half of the drow morphs at the abdomen and become a bloated spider body. However, this is the dungeon delve, so we're going to go a bit further. Driders are created from drow who fail the test of Lolth. This is a rite of passage trial that is administered by Lolth herself. The process is said to be an agonizing transformation that requires a yachlal. You like that?
Yeah.
Gave it your pronunciation?
You
Throw it in there. So it requires the yachlal, one of those wicked handmaidens of Lolth that we discussed previously, or I guess more specifically, they say it requires the magic of Lolth fixated or focused through a demon. So the Lolth is required to be present during the ritual that initiates the process. Interesting, it also mentions that the change can be reverted with the wish spell,
Okay.
which is said to be arguably the most powerful spell that a wizard can hope to learn. When I first came across him, I didn't understand why the hybrid of a drow and a spider would be considered a lesser caste of this society. I mean, they revere spiders. They serve the Spider Queen. But it's interesting because in the research I went through, it says that Drizzt are considered inferior because they're so weak and pathetic that Lolth herself had to step down and make them better. Some Drow will even go further and hunt and kill Driders. This shame can cause Driders to resent their Drow brethren for making them outcasts. They even try to forget their pasts, but that doesn't mean that they're suddenly good in alignment. And so the process of creating the Drider itself, they don't really get into a bunch of the finer details. But when they take the test, people who fail the test of Lolth, which is what the high priestesses or like followers of Lolth will end up going through, will then be, I guess it's like a werewolf transformation when you see it in the movies and the bones crack and the skin stretches and you know what I mean. I read a couple of different descriptions. One was a Reddit page that went in to look at the ecology of Drider. So they wrote it from a standpoint of somebody who was going through the Underdark trying to, like, notate denizens. So I thought it was really cool because they called them like these twisted souls of a drow. And it really is a misshapen identity. Like they keep everything from before. We're going to get into that here in a second, right? They're still bloodthirsty by nature for the most part. Their change that they go through can bring them a sense of shame, hatred, and fear, and this makes them into the violent and tireless hunters that they are. Hunting gives their life meaning, and they also need to drink blood every 4 days or they would deteriorate. So most of them harbor a death wish to die in battle, kind of like the glorious Viking Valhalla visage. Right. And if they don't, if they don't eat, they die outside of battle. And so that for them, this is such a horrible outcome.
Right.
All of these things together, the hatred and everything else, makes them almost immune to fear. Not in a gameplay sense, but in a personality sense.
So, do they remember being Drow before?
Yes. I believe they do. They keep their memories. They keep their spells, their abilities, everything like that. And then they go forward. Yeah, it's kind of creepy, and that's what brings about like the shame, because they try to forget their pasts. They don't succeed in forgetting their pasts. They're trying to act like they're not Drow because Drow make them feel like such an outcast from the society. They're killed. They're like the lowest of the low when it comes to the caste system inside of Mental Barrington. So like they hold this resentment towards the Drow, and part of them, they'll try to like earn the favor back in order to get the curse removed, essentially. They talked about. But the only thing I found that mentions the absolute ability to reverse it or anything like that would be the wish spell.
The wish spell, yeah. Okay.
For 5e, they are a large monstrosity. They have a chaotic evil alignment, which again, not very trustworthy normally.
Nope.
They have an armor class of 19, and it's natural armor, which means it's like part of their body. It's not armor they're putting on. So that makes them pretty hard to hit.
Yeah.
At least in your lower levels before you get some really cool gear and enchantments.
Yeah.
The hit points they get are 13 D10 dice plus 52. Yep. This means that if you roll all 13 of those dice perfectly, you could see a Drider with 182 hit points. And yikes!
With an AC of 19, that's going to take a group of level 1 characters a long time.
They have a speed of 30 feet, and they climb at 30 feet. They get 2 skill boosts. It's a +5 to perception and a +9 to stealth.
Ooh. Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, so good luck seeing them coming.
Right.
So they're aware of their surroundings, and they are sneaky for sure. But it makes sense, right? It's a spider.
Yep.
They do get 120 feet of dark vision and a 15 for passive perception. That's pretty high.
Yeah.
I feel a little bougie because my character right now has an extremely high passive perception, but he's a wizard, and I rolled well. The languages that they speak are Elvish and Undercommon. Again, making sense because they're formerly Drow.
Yep.
Or I guess they're still Drow, but they're also spider.
Yeah.
So they get saving throws against being charmed, and magic cannot put them to sleep. This is called Fey ancestry. They have innate spell casting. It's the ability is wisdom and spell save a DC 13. The Drider can innately cast dancing lights at will without any components. And then once a day they can cast darkness and fairy fire, same as when they were Drow. And that's what I was talking about before, where they do retain their abilities. Maybe not as similar as the house.
Like the house emblem levitate thing.
Yeah. Because like common Drow aren't able to use their powers as much as noble Drow. And what I mean is I'm not sure. I didn't find if they still keep, like if a high noble were to become a Drider, would they still have the same exact spells, or would they deteriorate a little bit to the common Drow?
Well, I would assume if they're Driders, they probably don't have their house emblems anymore. And if their house emblems are a source of power...
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know.
So they do have spider climb. This means that no ability check is needed for climbing on difficult surfaces, which even include being upside down on the ceiling.
They don't need to be able to levitate. They can climb.
Quickly. 8 legs. They do have sunlight sensitivity, which we evidently are giving out to everything in the Underdark, which makes sense. It does. It gives a disadvantage on attack rolls and wisdom checks that rely on sight in the sun. They also get Web Walker, which allows them to ignore movement restrictions caused by webbing, which makes sense because spiders. When it comes to attacks, they have multi-attack, so they can make 3 attacks. I had to stop and read that twice. I say, wait, they can make 3 attacks? So they get 180 hit points. They get a DC of armor class of 19, and they get 3 attacks. Oh, man. So it's either a long sword, a long bow, or they can replace either one of those with the bite attack. The bite is a melee attack. It's a +6 to hit, a reach of 5 feet. The hit is a D4 piercing damage, +2 D8 of poison damage.
Yeah.
Long sword's a melee, +6 to hit. Melee weapon attack, +6 to hit, reach of 5 feet, 1d8 +3 of slashing damage, or 1d10 +3 if it's two-handed, because remember, melee weapons, 1 or 2 hands, could be different.
Standard longsword, yep.
Mm-hmm. The longbow would be a ranged weapon, +6 to hit, range of 150 to 600 feet. Wow. They get a d8 +3 piercing damage and a d8 of poison damage. So that's pretty much what hit Drizzt, was probably the D8 +3 piercing damage and the D8 of poison. Right. Obviously, it plays out a little different in the book because the poison will continue to act.
Right.
He will get those effects in gameplay. Poison is continuous, right?
I forget.
Or not all poison.
Yeah, I think poison... It's a status condition. Mm-hmm. I forget exactly. I think it gives you disadvantage on ability checks or something until you rest.
Okay. But the poison wouldn't accumulate to the point where it kills you.
Not unless it has a paralyzing effect.
Okay.
But even then, yeah. No, I don't think poison, when you have the poison condition, it doesn't work toward killing you, no.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if it did. In my head, for some reason, it just does ongoing damage every round.
I don't think it does.
I guess that might also be like maybe a spell attack or a different type of attack that would deal an ongoing damage as opposed to this here. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, definitely they are a formidable enemy to run into by themselves.
Yep.
Running into a pack of them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that could really turn the situation a bit sticky in a heartbeat.
I will say, I DM'd for a group of students one time over the course of a few nights. It was their senior trip, and they wanted to play D&D, and I was like, okay.
Excellent, let's do this. You're all going to... No.
The last night, they decided to split the party. Some people wanted to go this way, some people wanted to go that way, and they were like, fine, we'll just go our separate ways, whatever. Like,
before you continue with the story, to everybody who's new in D&D, one of the tantamount rules that you're always going to hear over and over again is...
don't split the party.
And I feel like what Justin's going to do is give us a really good example of why you don't do that. Go ahead, buddy.
So they went through the main story that I came up with. It was short. It was, like 3 nights. That was it. And the one group decided they wanted to go back to where they saw Driders before. And it was just 2 of them. Of course they died.
Oh.
Because they go back looking for, I forget what they were looking for. And it was just like, there's Driders everywhere.
Yeah, and they're stealthy, they're sneaky, they've got good perception. I mean,
I forget what level they were, but yeah, it killed them all. And I'm just like, No, they're very, very strong. Like, and there were, I think they were fighting against 3 of them, and Like, that's...
Oh, boy.
I built the situation for them to be like, oh, shoot, we got to get out of here. And that's exactly what they did. But then some of them, I don't know, for some reason wanted to go back. And it's just like, no, that's not what that was. But anyway.
It's like watching those YouTube videos where the people go to pet the buffalo in Yellowstone. Like, no, don't do it.
Nope. They're not just a big fluffy bunny.
That's it for my dungeon delve.
Yep, and that's going to do it for this episode, so thank you for listening. Remember that if you like the show, smash that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating, share the podcast with your friends. We really appreciate it. Also, make sure you're getting the most out of this podcast, pick up a copy of the book, and read along with us. Is it difficult to find time to read? Perhaps you're like me, and you have 2 little gremlins at home that are rampaging around the house, making it impossible to read. Well, I have the solution for you. Just slap on a pair of noise-canceling headphones and listen to the audiobook. Listen during your commute, while you're out walking on a nice spring day, or even while you're grocery shopping. When you've read the next chapter, reach out to us. Let us know your dim lights for the chapter. You can reach out to us at drizzdoneright@gmail.com or log on to our Discord. Man, I did it again. Discord to join in on the discussion. We would love to hear from you.
And before we turn off the lights and flip the open sign on the door, just to let everyone know we're closed, we wanted to take a moment to throw it out there that if you're enjoying the show, please consider clicking the link in the episode description that says support this podcast. It's actually in the same episode description part as the invitation to the Discord link, but right below it says support this podcast. You can click on that link, put whatever you want in it. We're just going to put it towards stuff for the show, like new microphones, camera, sound equipment. From the bottom of the hearts, folks, we appreciate it. Farewell until next week. Play fair,